Hey everybody, day 6 of distance learning. I hope you're doing well. Today we're going to talk about mutations a little bit, just to kind of recap, and some genetic disorders. And I'm not going to talk about every single genetic disorder. I'm just going to focus on the ones that I think are like, you should probably know this. All right, so after today's lesson, you should be able to describe how genetic disorders occur and relate it to a mutation using academic language. And I just kind of included this image on the side so you could see all of these are just a couple of potential disorders that can occur from certain chromosomes. So as you can imagine, there's a lot more than this, but this is just showing you some. All right, so let's just for a minute remember and kind of recall chromosomal mutation versus a gene mutation. Chromosomal mutation refers to some sort of change in the entire structure of the chromosome, right? So if it's a deletion, we're missing a whole segment of the chromosome. If it's a duplication, we've copied a whole segment of the chromosome. Is it an inversion? We flipped part of the chromosome. If it's an insertion, we took a piece from one chromosome and the piece from the other, and it kind of got inserted, right? And if it's a translocation, same kind of idea there. So just take that. Remember, it's a structural, it's a much larger piece. A gene mutation tends to be just a single nucleotide change. So we should have had an A, we ended up with a G, something like that. So I kind of just wanted to recap that. Of course, you could go back and rewatch the video or ask me questions, but just a review. All right, so there's a ton that we're going to talk about. A ton that you could talk about. Today, we're really going to focus on cystic fibrosis. We talked a little bit about sickle cell anemia, and we talked a little bit about trisomy 21, Down syndrome before, and we talked about these briefly before as well, and we'll talk a little bit about color blindness. All right, so cystic fibrosis, what's happening if you have cystic fibrosis, and I have people that are always like, do I have this? No, if you had it, you would know. Basically, it's where we have a faulty protein. The protein wasn't made properly. And so the mucus that your body is supposed to develop, which it does, and it's a good thing, it doesn't get processed properly. So there's a buildup of excess of mucus, and it tends to primarily affect your respiratory system because it kind of gets stuck in your lungs, which isn't good. And it also affects part of your digestive system, which means it's a little bit difficult to process foods as well. There's about 10 million people in the US that are carriers for this CFTR gene mutation. There are inhalers, there's treatments. So if you have this, because of where science has kind of gone and medicine has gone, you can treat it. You can live a long, healthy life. That being said, you are on medications your entire life to kind of try and get that mucus processed out so it's easier for you to breathe. Okay, so that's really what we're looking at. So let's talk about the biology behind it. So I'll just get my little pen. You know I love my pen. So over here, if we're looking at chromosome 7, there's this thing called the CFTR gene. This is what helps all of us, you and myself included, because we don't have cystic fibrosis, process mucus properly. That's why the mucus doesn't build up in our lungs, unless we're sick, but that's a different story. I'm talking about always building up. So there's a mutation in that segment, specifically in that, and it doesn't make the right protein. Again, we have that occurring in our lungs and in our pancreas, which I'm not going to get into it too much. So how does it get passed down? Remember, these are little alleles. These are representing the gametes, remember? So if we're looking at dad, well, he can pass down he has 2 alleles that make a trait. So in this case, we're saying big R, little r, okay? So he's not affected. He doesn't have cystic fibrosis, but he's a carrier. Mom isn't affected as well, but she's also a carrier. And it shows you what that looks like. So if we have homozygous dominant, healthy boy, great, okay? We end up getting 2 heterozygous, remember different alleles. Still, they're healthy. They're carriers, but they're healthy themselves. And we have a 25% chance of getting homozygous recessive. And so if you get 2 of those recessive alleles, you know that that trait is what gets expressed. So that individual would end up having cystic fibrosis. And I hope that breaks it down a little bit for you. Again, just kind of looking at how that goes down. So this happens on chromosome 7, okay? This is actually what's going on. So this is like all of your cell membranes have this little channel that moves the mucus out. If you have that CFTR gene mutation, You aren't making these channels properly. So you're not able to move that mucus out efficiently, right? This is just, I wanted to give you a little Punnett square of like what that would look like. I'm not, I don't expect you to memorize this or anything, but if you do have questions about this, or if you're still not sure about Punnett squares, I'd like for you to ask me because they might pop up later on in your life sometime. So, you can always come by office hours and I'll help you out with that. All right, let's talk about color blindness. This is a lot more common. Now I want you to think about this. Do you know somebody that's colorblind? Okay, it's either yes or no. If it's a no, fine. If it's a yes, I want you to think about this. Is that person a male or female? The majority of you probably said male if you know someone, okay? I'm going to get into why that's the case in a minute. Now, color blindness doesn't mean you're blind, and it doesn't mean you see in black and white. It means that certain colors are distorted in the way that you're viewing them. It has to do with the rod and cone development in your eye, which is a whole other discussion. But this is a sex-linked disorder. Now, when I say that, I mean that it's a disorder that moves with the sex chromosomes. So it moves with either X or Y. In this case, most sex-linked disorders are on the X chromosome. Okay, so this is sometimes called an X-linked disorder or sex-linked disorder, things like that. So keep in mind, males are XY, females are XX. So 8% of the population and 0.5, less than 1% of the population have this. Now look, there's a huge difference in that. 8% are males, females that have this, less than 1. So why does this happen more in males? Take a minute and think, what do you think that might be the answer so far? Okay, gonna give it out, give it away. All right, so here's the deal. I kind of gave you a hint. Males are XY, females are XX. So if let's say you are a carrier mother, you're this lady right here. I'm gonna use green. You're this lady right here. You're a carrier mother. So you can see color just fine, but you're a carrier for that trait. You're gonna pass on one of these X's, okay? So you can only pass on either this X or this X, all right? Now, here's where it gets tricky. If you pass on the affected X to one of your potential sons, he only gets his X chromosome from you, right? Because he's XY, so he got the Y chromosome from the dad. That was what was in the sperm, okay? So for his X chromosomes, that's all the mom. So why do men have this more often? Well, really, it's only because men have one X chromosome. Females have two. So check this out. So let's say mom, she passes on that affected X to her daughter. She passes it on over here. Well, guess what? The female's XX. So she got the affected X from mom, but dad is unaffected. So he passed on his X and he's totally healthy. And so she's going to be able to see color fine. She's going to be a carrier, but she's going to see color fine. If this doesn't make sense, think about it this way. If you have 2 copies of a movie and one of the movies, for some reason, I don't know, it's an old school DVD and it has a scratch and doesn't work well, you can say, who cares? I don't have to use that one. Let me use the other DVD I have, right? So in this case, it's, hey, if you have an X that has faulty color vision genes, you have another X to make that up if you're a female. If you're a male, whatever you have on your X, that's all you get. That's why it's more common in males, because they only have one copy of the X chromosome. And I'm hoping that helps a little bit. I kind of gave just a little breakdown of how this looks. If you're wondering what the big B stands for, big B, in this case, it appears that big B stands for being able to see color. This is good. The little b stands for color blindness. Okay, and so again, that's just kind of what we're trying to show you. And if you have questions, just check in with me later. Sometimes you might see something called a pedigree. A pedigree is just another way of showing, it's kind of like a little family tree, but it shows you how certain traits move. This is usually only used for X-linked or sex-linked disorders. The 2 most common ones, as I said, color blindness, which we talked about, and hemophilia, which is that inability to clot blood. And we actually spoke about that when we talked about DNA and DNA mutations earlier on this year. If you forgot it, no worries, I get it. But I just wanted to let you know hemophilia is the inability to clot blood efficiently. This is something called a colorblind test. So there's a bunch of these online if you ever just kind of want to look up some. But basically, this is what they give to people. If you do think that you're colorblind, you would look at this and they'll ask you, okay, what number do you see? So for this first one over here, let's kind of do this a little bit together, just for fun, right? This one over here, okay, it tests for red and green color blindness. There's about 3 common types of color blindness. I won't get into that, but you should see a number there. So we should all see the number 7. If you don't see the number 7, give yourself a minute. Let's go to the next one. How about this one? This one over here, we should see the number 13. This one over here, we should see the number 16. This one down here, we should see number 8. This one down here, we should see number 12. And this one over here, we should see number 9. Okay, so I just wanted to go through those. So if any of those, if you're like, hey, I couldn't see the first one and the last one or something like that, it might be something that if you go to an optometrist or an ophthalmologist, you might just want to mention that and have them kind of test that out. Or if you go to your doctor anytime soon, might just want to test it out. That's it. And I'm hoping that this was a short and simple way to get you ready. Please let me know if you have any questions, and have a great rest of your day.